We are living through an incredible moment in history. You and I have been through many rounds of Middle East peace stops and starts. But an incredible result of getting the hostages back today, all 20 that were living, returned to Israel, reunited with friends and family, was absolutely remarkable and a possible turning point. And love to get your reflections, which I'm sure are wide and varied.
Yeah, look, first and foremost, hopeful. Mm-hmm. And that's a conflict of decades or centuries, if you follow it closely, for that matter, millennia. But right now, the hostages have been released. It feels like everyone is at the table, and we're due for some good news in that part of the world. Mm-hmm. I'm hopeful. You probably read our mutual friend Peggy Noonan over the weekend. She had such a wonderful mm-hmm. line in her piece. She said, "Sometimes pessimism reaches a point of moral error." Mm-hmm. I love that line because that's so many people, either they don't like Trump or they're upset about Israel or the Hamas. For whatever reason, let's let ourselves be hopeful. Maybe this pans out, maybe it doesn't. But right now, I'm real happy with where things are.
One of the things that isn't in the power of any president to do is the power to convene. And it's an important power, meaning you can call up and say, let's get a meeting on the schedule, and everyone's going to show up. So the president, after flying to Israel, which I also want to remark on in a moment about showing up for your friends, but after he addresses the Knesset in Israel, he meets with families and released hostages, and now he then flies to Egypt, where a large group of world leaders are going to get together to say, all right, what's next? And something that is different now is that there are many younger leaders in the Middle East than 25 years ago when you and I were working in cutting our teeth, in politics and getting our careers going. And these younger leaders have ambition to have a better future for their country. They don't like the old way of doing things. There's new technologies. There's new ways of communicating. And I just feel like we're on the cusp of something really important, and partly because of the relatively youthful energy of a new generation of people who are saying, do we have to keep doing it the same old way? Maybe we don't.
Look, I hope you're right about that part of the world. I'm sure there are experts who could explain how much of that is the hopeful cessation of hostilities, the fact that we saw some of these younger leaders seeing their older generation previously have a lot of unhappiness, or how much of that is that the older generation used technologies, unfortunately, for oversight and autocratic lockdowns. It's a messy part of the world. It is due for some good news. It is mm-hmm. due for some peace. This is a world and a part of the world where the best thing I think we can hope for is realpolitik and folks looking to make first downs, 3 yards, and a cloud of dust at a time.
I mentioned this lesson that I had learned from President Bush. It was towards the end of the administration, and two of the Wire reporters who had covered the president from, even when he was governor. Actually, they had covered his dad when he was president, so they had been there a long time. And they came in and they had final interviews with the president together. We did it joint. And they asked about Bill Clinton. And they said, how often did you see Clinton? He goes, well, more than you knew, because his wife was in the Senate, and then so he would be in town and he'd come over for lunch or something. And he said, and of course, during the campaign back then, do you remember when the Obama team said that Bill Clinton, they intimated that he was a racist because of his support in South Carolina? It just got really ugly down there in the South Carolina primary. And Bill Clinton, of course, he's not a racist. Oh my gosh. And President Bush, I remember, he said, I always believe that you should call your friends on their worst day, on the day when nobody else wants to talk to them. And I was thinking about that when President Trump said, I'll fly to Israel. I'll go. And I'm going to go stand with Netanyahu. I'm going to be with him. And maybe the rest of the world thinks he's terrible, but I'm going to stand up there and say he did the right thing. It was courageous. He did say he's tough to deal with, which was code maybe for something. But at the end, they showed that working in solidarity with your friends and showing up for your friends makes a difference in your personal life, but I guess on the world stage too.
Well, without a doubt, showing up for people when they most need you, when they're most isolated. I think the President Trump deserves credit. He also is taking a victory lap here. This is a pretty exciting time. He, more than any other person in the world, helped secure the release of the 20 remaining hostages. So, I'm not sure this is the worst moment. What is an interesting question, Dana, when they write history is how much of this ultimately is because Israel way overstepped when they attacked the Qatari government buildings, trying to go after the Hamas negotiators. And that ultimately, I think when we learn about it, I think what happened, rather than President Trump being a friend per se, President Trump decided, here's how we're going to have peace, Netanyahu. You're going to agree to what I'm telling you to agree to, or we're done with you. And you guys will truly be alone, and nobody will protect you in the UN Security Council, and nobody will give you the arms that you guys need to ensure your defense. And I think when all's said and done, this will be a matter of Trump finally decided we're going to have peace, and I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to guarantee the defense of the Qataris, and I'm going to tell the Israelis this is how it's got to be.
Well, I think also, though, that the president said to the Qataris, enough with coddling Hamas in your country. And if they were to release the hostages right now, all of this would stop. And sure enough, they released all the hostages and the bombing stopped. So I hope that we live long enough to read the history of it all. Are we in day 13 of the government shutdown? Is it the government shutdown that nobody noticed? I don't know. You're in D.C. Our people are a little bit more close to it. Obviously, if you've not lost your job, but if you're not an essential worker or called an essential worker and you're waiting to see if you're going to get paid, obviously you've been affected. But day-to-day people, at least so far, I feel like they haven't noticed yet, Bruce.
There is no obvious sign that this is about to end, not least because neither side thinks they're losing.
Right.
The Democratic base wants to see their leaders fight. The Republican base says the fight the Democrats are bringing has nothing to do with funding the government. I think for a lot of the Republicans, they remember in 2013, Republicans were blamed because they shut the government down because they wouldn't agree to funding unless, per Senator Cruz, the Affordable Care Act went away. And ultimately, the voters said, this is about funding government. It's not about health care. You guys need to bring your votes. And the Republicans decided to vote it. For a lot of Republicans, they're like, so once again, the Democrats now are shutting down government. It's about health care. It's not about funding the government. And why should we continue to vote to extend COVID subsidies? They don't think they're losing, and they're not feeling it. And until one side or the other is concluding they have a need or an incentive to cut a deal, we're paying the troops, Dana.
Right.
That was the pressure point. The only thing left is, God forbid, the air traffic controllers. And I say that as somebody who's got a lot of flights ahead.
Yeah, I know. And we had friends come this weekend, and of course there was the storm in the Northeast, and everything was fine. And so it's interesting because if there was more pain felt up front, then maybe everybody would get together sooner. But you're right. Nobody feels that they're losing. Bruce, why do we keep having the same argument over and over again about Obamacare?
Well, healthcare is really important.
And very expensive.
And it's the largest sector of our economy. So it's a big economic fight. We generally do it employer-sponsored, but the rest of the world often has government-paid healthcare. So that creates different dynamics here. Republicans historically have thought that the job of government is to do a few basic things very well. And Democrats have long been the party that wants to have government do more for more people. And that includes more health care and more subsidies for health care and to make health care cost less. These are fundamental differences that aren't, you decide it or you compromise and they're over.
I was recently at a doctor's appointment where there was some equipment that was being used and it was individually wrapped. And I said, but do you use that again? They said, no. It all gets thrown away after we use it on you. And I was like, really? That seems very wasteful. But there's also safety concerns and there's also legal liabilities if something were to go wrong. And so there are so many reasons why healthcare is expensive. There's the researchers, there's the salary, all of those things. And I feel like a more competitive free market would be better for healthcare. But
well, you could throw in, Dana, like a third of the spend is administrative costs.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, we can and need to do healthcare better. Healthcare and education and government are the three least productive sectors in our economy.
Is that right?
One of the hopes of AI is that maybe technology can bring a level of productivity that we see in manufacturing, that we see in in information services, to those laggards.
So Avik Roy had a piece in the Washington Post saying, here are 5 things that we should do on healthcare. And it made so much sense to me. 4 days later, Kim Strassel of the Wall Street Journal, who we both know and love, she writes a column. She's like, here's what we should do on healthcare. And she points to Avik Roy's piece. I'm like, everyone needs to go and read this piece because I feel like we could have a lot of agreement, but I don't know if that's going to happen. In the meantime, I just read an article, Bruce, about Western business leaders, so I'm assuming American and European leaders, having most recently gone to China and coming back completely freaked out about the advancements in robotics that China has achieved. And I told Kate, my assistant Kate, the game Pac-Man?
Sure.
And you go around, you're going ding, 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 and you're eating up, and then you eat the ghost, and then you go, and then you get to go, and you're eating all these things, and you're like, okay, and here's President Trump, and he's eating all the little dots, and he's like, I'm going to, right now, I'm going to go after Middle East peace, and I'm going to go to Azerbaijan and Armenia, I'm going to make sure that everybody's getting along there. How about I'm going to do this thing here, and he's got all of these things going on, and then you exit as the Pac-Man, and you come back around, and there's China. And you're like, shoot. They're still there, and they're big.
Well, look, first, I wonder if that analogy will make sense to anybody under 40. But I, of course...
Kate said she knew it because she had a Game Boy.
Perfect. It's, as you know better than I do, and better than most people in the world, being president's the hardest job in the world. One of the maybe unwritten about things, but is an interesting phenomenon to me. Donald Trump's an old dude, but he is showing a ton of energy. Let's hop a plane. Let's go over to the Middle East. I'll come back at midnight. Mm-hmm. You need to have a lot of energy. And frankly, it helps to be a lot younger because it's a really hard job. You got to negotiate government shutdowns. You've got to worry about cybersecurity. You've got to worry about
all the things.
Ukraine, Russia. It's even if you don't get to rest, even if you have a great day and you actually lead to peace in 8 parts of the world, there are 8 more parts of the world that are going to be on fire, and a whole lot of other folks who perceive your distraction as an opportunity. It's a really hard job. It's one reason why I think all of us, especially you friends in the media, need to give presidents on all sides a bit more latitude. It's a tough job.
Yeah.
And they're going to get 5 wins and they're going to get beat up for the 5 they didn't get to that day. It's tough.
I look forward to every Sunday with you, but also when you're on the podcast. Thanks so much, Bruce.
Thanks for having me, Dana.
Okay, we'll see you soon.